Billy Wilder had one name in mind for the greatest Hollywood tragedy ever made. In 1949, he flew to New York and offered her over $1 million in today's money. She read the script and something made her walk away. Was it pride, fear, or did she see something in that character that hit too close to home? What happened next sent Wilder scrambling through Hollywood's biggest names. 5 legendary actresses said no. Each one had a reason they never wanted the public to know. And the woman who finally said yes almost destroyed herself doing it. Billy Wilder's idea for Sunset Boulevard began with a spark that was sharper than the usual Hollywood dream. He wanted a story about faded, silent movie stars, a story that peeled back the shine and showed what happened when fame slipped away. And while he shaped that idea in 1948, his boldest plan was already forming. He imagined Mae West as Norma Desmond and a young Marlon Brando as Joe Gillis. Mae West carried decades of vaudeville fire. Brando was just 21 and still unknown, but Wilder could already feel something raw in him. He believed their mix would create a pair unlike anything Hollywood had dared to show. So he flew to New York in 1949 and offered West $100,000, which is more than $1 million today. He thought her real persona matched Norma's longing for eternal fame. West had built her name on glamour and confidence, and Wilder believed that if anyone could hold a spotlight while falling apart inside, it was her. He expected the film to tilt toward dark comedy if she joined, turning her sharp charm into something haunting. But when she refused, everything shifted, and the film began walking toward the version the world knows today, the one where Gloria Swanson's performance became legend. West's reaction was cold and loud at the same time. Her team read the script and immediately sensed trouble. She was 57, yet she still saw herself as radiant and unstoppable. Playing someone whose best days were behind her felt like an insult to everything she had built. She called the script depressing and refused to step into a story about decline. Her fans wanted her powerful and glowing, not wounded. So she walked away. Years later, after watching Swanson get an Oscar nomination, she admitted she had felt the weight of that rejection. Even so, she chose loyalty to her own image. She cared more about how her audience saw her than about joining a masterpiece. And that choice shaped the tone of the film forever. Because once West stepped aside, Wilder's original plan vanished. The playful satire he imagined slowly hardened into something darker. Swanson brought a stillness and madness that turned the film into a tragedy instead of a wink at old Hollywood. West's decision also deepened her own legend. She preserved her myth, but lost a role that might have changed everything for her. Hollywood felt the shift, too. The film became a warning about the danger of living inside old applause. Greta Garbo entered the story next, even though she was far away in Switzerland, hiding from the world she once ruled. Wilder had worked with her before in Ninotchka in 1939, and he knew her mystery better than most. So in 1949, he wired her with an offer. Come play a faded star. Play the truth. Her answer came back sharp and short. One word, no. Garbo had retired in 1941 after Two-Faced Woman collapsed in theaters, and critics mocked her attempt at comedy. That failure cut deeply and never healed. She was terrified of talkies, terrified of the spotlight turning cruel again. The idea of playing a woman whose downfall echoed her own life felt unbearable. Her biographer later revealed she burned the script without even reading it. Wilder laughed years later and said casting her would have been too real because she carried a silence that could freeze a room. Her refusal came from fear and pride mixed together, the same blend that kept her hidden for half her life. Her retirement itself carried a shadow. When MGM tried to revive her with Two-Faced Woman, the reviews tore her apart. After that, she closed the door on Hollywood and never opened it again. She moved to Manhattan and lived in near silence until she died in 1990. She avoided reporters, premieres, interviews, everything. The idea of playing Norma Desmond brought back the one thing she wanted to escape forever: decline, mockery, the same cold mirror she never wanted to face again. So she chose distance instead of risk. When her biographer later described the script burning, people finally understood how personal that moment had been. Wilder wanted her for Norma because he saw the parallel. She saw the same parallel and wanted no part of it. The story felt like a wound waiting to reopen. In her mind, accepting that role meant allowing the world to watch her fall a second time, and she had run too far to ever return. Then came Pola Negri, another silent film legend whose life could have slipped straight into the script. Wilder called her in 1949, ready to explain the role. She had a thick Polish accent, and the phone line kept cracking. Wilder struggled to explain that she would play a faded star hungry for a comeback. Negri heard something else entirely. She thought he was offering her a vampire film. She hung up before he could fix the misunderstanding. The call became a joke in Wilder's circle, but it caused real trouble. They had to chase her agent for nearly a week, trying to explain the mistake. Negri had the style and spirit that could have carried the film in a strange, captivating way. But the moment slipped away. Her maid finally explained the real script to her, but the accident had already closed the door. And when she realized the truth, regret hit her hard. She later wrote that Norma's hunger mirrored her own forgotten passion. She had lived through silence, romance with Rudolph Valentino, worldwide fame, and then the struggle to survive the shift to sound. The role was meant for someone who had lived everything Norma had lived, yet she lost it because of a single misunderstanding. Gloria Swanson stepped in instead, and her performance became iconic. Negri admired her, but admitted the missed chance stayed with her. She said it was one of her greatest regrets. Mary Pickford opened the door of Pickfair on December 7, 1948, carrying the same presence she had carried through her whole career. And Billy Wilder felt it the moment he stepped inside. He looked around and noticed how the mirrors were everywhere, catching the light and throwing it back at them. They were on the walls, in the closets, even in the bathrooms, and each one seemed to remind her of who she had been. Wilder and Charles Brackett had come to offer her the role of Norma Desmond in Sunset Blvd. But the moment Wilder saw those mirrors, he felt something shift inside him. Before Brackett could even finish the first line of the pitch, Wilder stopped him because he already knew Pickford would never accept a story about a fading actress clinging to a younger man. She was 57 and still holding tightly to the image of America's sweetheart. The meeting ended almost as soon as it began, and as they walked out of the mansion, the air felt heavy. Both men knew she would never play a character who exposed wounds she didn't want to face. Even so, Pickford's name kept circling the project. She had co-founded United Artists in 1919 with Chaplin, Griffith, and Fairbanks, and she still carried the weight of that legacy. She had not appeared in a film since Secrets in 1933, and the idea of flipping her pure, innocent image into something tragic fascinated Wilder. He wanted to use everything she had represented and turn it on its head. But the industry had changed. By 1952, new management had taken over United Artists, and in 1956, she sold her shares for $3 million, ending her last connection to the company she had built with so much pride. Sunset Boulevard would have been a chance for a comeback, a chance to rewrite the way Hollywood remembered her. Yet she refused to let go of the girl she once was, and the role slipped away. Life after retirement only pushed her deeper into shadows she didn't want to face. She battled alcoholism, the same struggle that ran through her family. And Pickford slowly faded, just like its owner. Rooms once filled with laughter and famous guests grew quiet. Even when Wilder offered her $75,000 to play Norma Desmond, she snapped that she was not that old. The mansion stood still while her world shrank, and by the time Pickford was sold and demolished in 1990, it felt like a final echo of her decline. Her story and the themes of Sunset Boulevard ran side by side without ever touching, and that made her refusal hurt in a quiet but lasting way. She did more than just refuse in person. She sent a long letter filled with demands meant to reshape the story into something she could accept. She wanted Joe Gillis to act respectful. She wanted the affair removed because she found it disgusting. She could not imagine herself playing a woman who reached for a younger man out of fear and loneliness. Her changes would have erased the whole spine of the film and hollowed out its dark heart. Wilder and Brackett understood immediately, and they moved on. When they found Gloria Swanson, they found someone willing to step into the pain, not run from it. Pickford wasn't the only one who said no. Before Swanson, Clara Bow was asked, and her answer held its own sadness. Clara had ruled the 1920s as the it girl, but talkies exposed her stutter in the Fleet's Inn in 1928, and the cruelty of that moment never left her. By 1931, she was just 25, and already in Glendale Sanitarium with doctors warning her to stay away from acting. Years of scandals, breakdowns, and fear had worn her down. When producers reached out with Sunset Boulevard, she chose silence instead of stepping back into a world that had hurt her. It was a quiet ending to a career that once burned brighter than almost anyone else. Norma Shearer was another name whispered for the role. She had been the First Lady of MGM and had won an Oscar, but the death of her husband Irving Thalberg in 1936 drained her confidence. As the years passed, she grew afraid of playing older women and of hearing whispers that she was slipping. Her last films did not do well, and by 1942, she chose to walk away from the camera altogether. Even when Bette Davis reached out later, she turned her down. She left with grace, wanting the world to remember her before the years changed how they looked at her. George Cukor finally pointed Wilder toward Gloria Swanson because he understood something the others didn't. Swanson knew the heights of fame and the sting of decline. She was 51 in 1950. She had once stunned audiences with silent films like Sadie Thompson, and she had also stood in front of talkie microphones that betrayed her. She lived in a home on Sunset Boulevard and carried her own scars and pride. Cukor knew she had the right mix of strength and pain. When Swanson received the offer of $50,000, she was stunned that Paramount wanted a screen test after she had made 20 films for them. She stormed into offices demanding to know why. Her anger echoed the same fury Norma Desmond carried on screen. Every failure she had lived through, every rejection, all of it burned in her voice. But she also knew that this role could reshape her entire legacy. She agreed to the tests. Cukor pushed her even harder. He told her to do 10 tests, or he would shoot her, because this moment defined everything. It was an outrageous line, delivered with the blunt force of a friend who understood what was at stake. She finally gave in and filmed a key scene with William Holden. All the tension and fear she had carried poured into that moment. It was real, and the studio felt it. While all of this circled Swanson, the role of Joe Gillis carried its own drama. Montgomery Clift was offered $5,000 a week for 12 weeks, a total of $60,000. Adjusted for today, it would be nearly $780,000. He signed the contract in 1949, but only days before filming in August, he walked away. The official reason was that the role felt too close to what he had done in The Heiress, and he felt he had not done well in that film. Wilder was furious and shouted that Clift could seduce a battleship, so why was he suddenly afraid? But the truth underneath his decision was more complicated. Clift was in a secret relationship with Libby Holman, a singer and actress 15 years older than him. She had a life full of scandals, affairs, and whispered stories about her desires, and Clift protected her fiercely. He feared that taking a role where a young man becomes involved with an older woman would draw attention to their relationship. It could expose his bisexuality in a time when such truth could destroy a career. Their relationship was intense, and Holman called him the one great passion of her life. The film would have drawn the spotlight straight toward them, and Clift stepped away before that could happen. His choice fit the way he lived. He refused long studio contracts and always chose independence over safety. But that freedom came with a cost. He turned down roles in On the Waterfront, High Noon, Shane, A Star is Born, and others that later shaped the careers of huge stars. He never won an Oscar despite being nominated several times. His path inspired many actors to fight for control over their careers, yet it also showed how much can be lost when a person refuses to bend even a little. William Holden was 32 in 1950, and the shine he once carried from Golden Boy in 1939 had almost slipped away. A whole decade had passed. He had served in World War II, returned to Hollywood with hope. And yet, film after film came out flat. By the time the new decade arrived, people whispered that he was drifting toward the B-list. Then something strange happened. Montgomery Clift turned down the role of Joe Gillis in Sunset Boulevard, and Billy Wilder looked around for someone hungry, someone who understood the feeling of sinking. He turned to Holden and offered him a contract worth $39,000, which would be nothing compared to what Clift was offered. Holden didn't think twice. He grabbed the script and shouted yes because he knew this could be it. The film came out on August 10, 1950, and everything changed. His cynical Joe Gillis pulled him out of the shadows and pushed him into a new place. By 1956, he became the top box office star in America. Without this one chance, his story might have faded quietly. But the success of the film showed the world that he was still holding on. During filming, the tension between Holden and Gloria Swanson added another layer to the story. Swanson had lived through the silent era and carried that old Hollywood glamour into every scene. She wanted Norma Desmond to look elegant and wealthy, not old and broken. She even insisted that Holden should be made up to look younger, so the contrast didn't make her seem past her prime. Wilder agreed, and makeup artist Wally Westmore stepped in, smoothing Holden's look until he fit the world Swanson wanted to protect. At first, they clashed over these choices, but something deeper tied them together. Both feared the same thing. Both knew the feeling of being pushed aside by Hollywood. That fear created small moments on set, where emotions slipped through, moments that shaped scenes more than the script ever could. Even the famous pool shot, where Joe Gillis is shown floating face down, came from their willingness to experiment as Wilder tried mirrors and different angles until the image felt right. Their shared vulnerability flowed into the film, giving it a pulse that felt too real. Holden's performance earned him his first Oscar nomination, but the win came later with Stalag 17 in 1953. He played Sefton, a man so difficult and sharp that people almost hated him, yet they could not look away. When Holden won Best Actor, he kept his acceptance speech short because time was tight. Just a simple thank you repeated twice. Later, he paid for ads in trade papers so he could properly thank everyone he missed. Some believed the Academy gave him the award because he didn't win for Sunset Boulevard, but the impact of the performance was real. Holden had a way of letting audiences see themselves, their frustration and their ambition inside his characters, and that gift shaped his entire career. While Holden's rise was unfolding, another forgotten figure stepped onto the set. Erich von Stroheim had once been a giant of the silent film age, directing classics like Greed and The Wedding March. But by 1950, he was struggling so much that some stories said he even slept in the ladies' room of the Chateau Marmont. When Wilder offered him the role of Max, he accepted it for $10,000 because he needed the work. He didn't just collect his lines and deliver them. He brought ideas about Max's life, ideas that echoed the fall of a real Hollywood titan. He suggested Max wrote all of Norma's fan letters and took care of the most private parts of her life. Wilder cut some of the details, but Stroheim's presence still carried the weight of his past. His salary looked tiny compared to Gloria Swanson's $50,000, but the role gave him something far bigger. It gave him a chance to be seen again. Then came Cecil B. DeMille, the giant who had shaped Swanson's early career. He agreed to appear in the film, but he had his terms. He wanted $10,000 and a brand new Cadillac. Later, when Wilder asked for a close-up, DeMille asked for another $10,000. They paid him. The scene was filmed on the set of Samson and Delilah, the biggest hit of 1949. As Swanson stepped onto the lot, DeMille greeted her with "young fella," the same name he had used for her in real life. The moment blurred time. Past and present folded into each other, and the film felt more honest because of it. Even the Cadillac became part of Hollywood lore, a little symbol of what people paid to bring legends back to life. Nancy Olson entered this world as the newcomer. She was only 22 when she landed the part of Betty Schaefer. Her chemistry with Holden during their screen test sealed her place in the cast. Her pay was only $5,000, far less than Swanson's. Yet she delivered a performance that earned her an Oscar nomination. For her, that nomination meant more than the win. It showed that even a young actress in her first big film could leave a mark. She later spoke about how the movie made her question Hollywood itself. She saw what it did to people. She saw how stars were lifted one moment and forgotten the next. Her character's optimism stood out in a film full of shadows, and her role still carries that light today. One of the most striking choices Wilder made was using real silent film footage inside Norma Desmond's home. Scenes from Swanson's unfinished 1929 film Queen Kelly flickered across her mansion walls. It wasn't just a clever idea. It made Norma's memories feel real. It made her loss feel heavier. Queen Kelly had never been completed, but the footage survived and fit perfectly into the story. When Norma stared at those images, audiences watched Gloria Swanson look at her own past. The connection was so deep that fiction and truth almost melted together. It reminded people of what silent cinema once was and what Hollywood chose to leave behind. Gloria Swanson's journey back into the spotlight began with a screen test she never wanted to do. She was 50 in 1949 and had already made over 20 films for Paramount. When she was asked to audition, she pushed back. She felt she shouldn't need to prove herself. George Cukor begged her to show up, warning her that refusing could destroy the opportunity. She finally agreed. The test captured her in full makeup, delivering the line, "We didn't need voices. We had faces with a stillness that froze everyone watching." Wilder saw the footage and said she was the one. He also believed that she carried pieces of Norma inside her, pieces shaped by the pain of watching her own career fade when talkies arrived. She had lived through the same fear her character screamed about, and that honesty made every scene feel sharp. The film began with a smaller budget, but changes and rewrites pushed the cost to $1.85 million. Paramount almost shut the project down. Worried audiences wouldn't accept such a dark story. They feared the cruelty of Hollywood shown on the screen was too heavy. Wilder and Brackett refused to let go. They shaped Norma more carefully, softened some edges, and layered her pain until the studio finally agreed to continue. The gamble paid off. The film grossed more than $1 million in its initial release and proved that audiences were ready for something different. Swanson kept shaping Norma even during filming. She ad-libbed lines, suggested gestures, and changed moments so they felt honest. The script had only 26 pages ready when production started. So much of it grew day by day. Wilder trusted her instincts, especially because her own past blurred so closely with Norma's. Her suggestions turned the character into someone deeper than written words. They made her tragic and unforgettable in a way only Swanson could manage. When Sunset Boulevard premiered at Radio City Music Hall on August 10, 1950, the reaction was immediate. People felt stunned by how brutally the film exposed Hollywood's darker side. It earned 11 Oscar nominations, but the acting categories shocked everyone when Swanson and Holden didn't win. Still, the film earned 3 Oscars and built a legacy that carried far beyond the awards season. It became one of the greatest films ever made and later entered the National Film Registry for preservation in 1989. Financially, the film did more than survive. It made about $2.35 million in the United States and became one of Radio City's biggest hits, with $1.02 million in 7 weeks. Worldwide, the total reached $5 million by 1960. Swanson's career lifted again, bringing television opportunities and renewed fame. The movie's long life showed that even dark stories could shine if they were honest. Years later, the story moved beyond film. Andrew Lloyd Webber turned it into a Broadway musical in 1993 with Glenn Close as Norma. The show won several Tony Awards and became a force of its own. Then in 2024, a new revival starred Nicole Scherzinger. It won 3 Tony Awards, including Best Musical Revival and Best Actress. Audiences filled the theaters again, proving that Norma Desmond's story still pulls people in. The revival's minimalist design and sharp storytelling gave the old tale a new life, reminding everyone that Sunset Boulevard will never stop echoing through time.